Though the Florida Panthers are down, the mindset of the team is not a catastrophe. On this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, we're going to be bringing in Francisco Oporta of Litterbox Cats and Florida Panthers historian to talk about the themes going into game 2 as the Florida Panthers look to tie up the series against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Let's do this.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And welcome to this Thursday, May 19th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from PantherParkway.com, and you can follow me on Twitter at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on Twitter at LO_FLA Panthers. And thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. Don't forget to also follow the national show Locked On NHL and the Crosscheck NHL show with Andrew Berkshire and Mary Clark. We'll be covering all the postseason activities around the National Hockey League. Well, Florida Panther fans, like we said at the top of the show, that sure, this team is down 0-1. We've seen it before with their series against Washington Capitals, although this is a much tougher test for this Florida Panthers team going into game 2. It's a two-time defending Stanley Cup champions, but the team's not freaking out. Andrew Burnett talks about how this is not a catastrophe when it comes to this Florida Panthers team and the position they're in right now. Of course, we all know the issues of them still not having a power play goal, and of course, it being a consistent theme from last season. But, it's a fresh start. It's a fresh game going into game 2. And one order of business at a time for the Florida Panthers is just protect home ice in game 2. But let me bring in my guest on the show, is a recent guest of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. You've heard his voice before. He is of Litterbox Cats and Florida Panthers historian Francisco Oporta. Francisco, how are you doing today, man?
I'm all right, Armando. I'm just, everybody's recovering from yesterday, but at the very least, the team's in high spirits, and they've been here before, and we've been here before as a fan base last round. But I guess there's not as much panic that's been hit, but there's still panic. Of course, it's the Panthers fan base, so there's always going to be panic until we actually win the damn thing. So yeah.
Yeah, and not gonna lie, I woke up a little bit annoyed this morning about just everything that happened in game 1. And of course, I wanted to keep the same energy that I had even from when the Florida Panthers were winning, and talk about like checking in with people of how they're feeling, and just not feeling that, not gloating when things get high, but also when things get low. Like right now, the Florida Panthers are right now in a low, but of course, roller coaster ride. These are the ups and downs of the postseason. And I want to give a little perspective about where the Florida Panthers stand, and talking about a little bit about how the quest for the three-peat for the Tampa Bay Lightning on the other side. And when the Pittsburgh Penguins in 2018, when they were on their quest for their three-peat, game 1 in their second round series against the Washington Capitals, the Pittsburgh Penguins won game 1. They didn't win that series.
Right.
So and that was for Pittsburgh on the road in Washington as well. And I'm sure the Capitals fan base was thinking, oh, this isn't a team that they can't get over the hump with. That Sidney Crosby's always going to have Alex Ovechkin's number. And look what happened. Another perspective. The Boston Bruins in 2011, they start 0 for 30 on the power play. They win the Stanley Cup. And guess who scored that first power play goal for the Boston Bruins, Francisco? Take a guess.
I mean, Patrice Bergeron or Brad Marchand. Milan Lucic. I'm not sure.
Zdeno Chara was that
Zdeno.
guy.
Okay, yeah, there we go.
Yep. Yep. Norris Trophy winner, Zdeno Chara. So with with that, that's kind of how I approach a game like tomorrow, where where the power play for the Panthers is, right now not in a good spot, being 0 for 21, and also the two-time defend league Stanley Cup champions coming in. What's kind of your mindset going into tomorrow?
I mean, it's more or less it's a rivalry game still. So all of those feelings, but like any good rivalry, there's going to be some back and forth. So I feel like the Panthers are going to push back finally. And the same thing happened last year with the series last year. I mean, that series could have gone to 7 the way it was played, but I think they're a lot more comfortable than they were, um, let's say last week when they were down 2-1 or they lost game 1 to Washington, and very much the same type of situation, except here with higher stakes in the second round, and it's their own in-state / division rival. But the things that I've been hearing from them today after the game as well, it kind of they're keeping a level head, which is probably the best thing to do right now at the very least. And I'm not hearing as much of the things that I heard in the first round, which was the whole thing about the nerves and all that stuff. Like now they're in it. Now they're over that. Now it's just a matter of execution. Execution, obviously, it's hockey, so randomness falls into that, getting lucky sometimes, and just closing it out well. I mean, I think they played well for at the very most 2 periods, but then the third period just things kind of got out of hand, and that's something that they can clean up. They've been able to clean up, but it's also something that uh, I saw from the Lightning. I mean, one of the big things that I saw with that last third period was just how the Lightning were able to keep things together uh, with a high-powered offense, which is the same thing that they did against Toronto in Game 7. And that was a defensive clinic that they did over there. But the Panthers took some bad penalties as
Yes.
well, and bad breaks. I mean, it looked like they finally netted that power play goal, and unfortunately, they hit the wrong net. They hit the net behind the net that they were going for. So, and yeah, you got to challenge that, and it was what it was. So, unfortunately, the monkey is still on their back, but I still feel good. The series is definitely not lost, and I don't think it'll be as daunting as far as going on the road because they don't have to go as far. It's just a matter of we need one at home, so just get it done. Lightning are banged up. They're without a point now, so he's gone. I mean, we're without Marchman. He's not going to be there. Way things are going, but I think our chances are still good. We played them well for 2 periods. It's just a matter of let's just finish it off the way that the Panthers always do, and hopefully not in cardiac cats fashion. I'd like an actual comfortable victory in the playoffs,
Yes.
but
Please.
Mhm.
Yeah. And you mentioned it. John Cooper said that Braden Point will not play tomorrow. Mason Marchment didn't rule him completely out, but there's a strong possibility that he is out. And a little bit about that third period that I didn't mention this on yesterday's show at all, about how dominant the Tampa Bay Lightning really were in the third period. They doubled their amount of shots on goal in the third period alone, and but that had to do more than just that. That had to do more of they knew that they were getting in there. They knew that they were getting the Florida Panthers out of position, and then they were just off and running on that one. And of course we talked about the staying out of the box, and I find it hard to believe that the Florida Panthers are going to allow 14 power play shots again, with a total of being down 12 minutes on a man advantage. Like I said, 20% of the game yesterday. So when I'm hoping, of course, that it's a lot closer, and that we can see more of this even strength because they said it in the post-game presser. They said it this morning that they like what they can do on 5-on-5. You eliminate even half of those power play shots, maybe even to 75%, which is around like 3 or 4. Then you're giving yourself a better chance to win.
Completely. It's very much just a matter of more disciplined hockey, right? Get those keep those sticks out of people's faces, Gustav Forsting, please. And also just execution. It's special teams battles. The Lightning will literally kill you on that. Well, not literally, but figuratively kill you on that. But it also just a matter of doing that. Like I said, I thought the first 2 periods they played well. Okay, you gave up a power play goal in the second period. I get that. Corey Perry gets that shot in. Sure, but fine. I'll take that going 1-1 into the third period at home. Had the third period gone, taking a couple or even half less penalties, like you said, and executing that one power play, I would assume one power play itself would probably have changed the momentum of that third period, and we might be looking at the Panthers. Maybe they go into overtime, and we know how the Panthers do in overtime.
Yep.
So that's always the thing. You would have felt the energy in the building when they were in overtime. It's like, oh, here we go. So that's because once again, and I said this last time I was on, and it was something Bill Lindsay had always said, that it's the Panthers need to find ways to get teams to try and keep up with them. So they need to keep up that tempo, more not let the Lightning determine the tempo of the game. And you mentioned it with how many shots the Lightning got in that third period. The Lightning were dictating the tempo of the game, and yeah, power plays are going to do that to you. Being on the penalty kill all that time, but yeah, it was very much the Lightning's period, and I still it was nothing that looked egregious to me, to be honest. I didn't see as much of that chickens with their heads cut off type of thing, and they're just flailing about. I felt like the Panthers just cleaned some things up a little bit, and there were good signs in that game. Look, Duke got a goal. Yes. Anthony Duclair was noticeably absent in the first round. In fact, he was literally absent because he didn't play as well towards the end there. And then they stick him back in the lineup, and he scores the opening goal. Mm-hmm. And that was really good to see. Getting him going is going to get some things going with the rest of the team. So as far as the power play, I mean, I've been looking. I'm sure you've checked out Panthers Twitter, and everybody's got their suggestions as to what they can do. It's like throw Patrick Hornquist back in there or something like that. You know, there's all kinds of line combos, and you know they did the 5 forwards thing as well last game, and it looked good. The second power play wasn't as bad as the first one, so I think that was. They're getting there. They're this close. They're right there. As soon as they just need one legitimate power play goal, and I feel like that will be it. They'll be like, okay, we got it. Thank you. All right, and then they can move forward. So.
Yeah, all about getting that monkey off their back for the Panthers when it comes to the man advantage. But we're gonna transition over to the next segment where we're gonna talk about the path that the Panthers are currently on, and we're going to compare it to a team out west and their path that they're currently on, as well as like Francisco said, we're going to talk about the sticks for the Panthers as well in the next segment of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But first, we're going to tell you all about Built Bar, and now Built Bar has brownie batter puffs, and I love brownies, but you know what I love more? Brownie batter. Sometimes I eat half the batter just while I'm making brownies. Imagine if you could lick that brownie spatula clean and get some protein in. You're in luck because Built has a new creation, and this one is better than ever. The brownie batter puffs, you heard me right. This puff makes protein bars to a whole different level, and they're available right now at Built.com. Have you tried the puffs yet? I'm not sure what you're waiting for. Puffs are a chocolate-covered marshmallow protein bar. That's right, delicious flavored marshmallow covering 100% real chocolate. With 140 calories, 17 grams of protein, and 7 grams of sugar brownie batter puffs. They're the most perfect pick me up any day. Go to built.com, use promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. Second segment here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast on this Thursday, May 19th edition of the show. I'm Armando Velez. I got Francisco Oporta of Litterbox Cats and Florida Panthers historian. So, Francisco, I want to talk more about the path to, the Lord Stanley's Cup. And I think about after recording yesterday, I was still very wide awake. So I stayed up for the West Coast game, stayed up for Colorado, St. Louis. And I saw a resurgence of maybe we saw a resurgence of Jordan Binnington after a few rough years after winning the Stanley Cup, and keeps the St. Louis Blues in it. Of course, Colorado is man, they are a juggernaut, and they haven't even lost a game in this whole series. And we talked about how at least most of the national media, for as far as the NHL, they talk about the path to in the Western Conference is a lot easier, quote unquote, than the path to the East. Man, even right now in this second round series against the Tampa Bay Lightning, it really feels like you're going to be, whoever makes it out of the East is going to be battered and bruised. Right before recording here, it was 1-0 Rangers at the end of the second period, and those are the two defensively sound hockey teams in all of the National Hockey League, and all of it belongs in the East. So I think about Colorado's path right where they're at, and I kind of see like Florida's path right now. And of course, we talked about the 100 points that every single team had, and the teams that were determined even way before season's end. So, man, I think about if the Florida Panthers are to get out of this, then we got to be feeling really good about ourselves. But of course, order of business is to take care of home ice in game 2.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm trying not to look too forward into the future because we got Tampa in front of us right now.
Correct.
Even though, man, a series, and look, you got Carolina, and you got the bunch of jerks and all those guys there. Trocheck's on that team, obviously. You've got that narrative, and then you got the New York Rangers. Panarin chose New York over us, and you got Gerard Gallant there as well, which would be a huge storyline. Of course, the New York South Florida thing as well, all the transplants down here. That'd be fun to see. And I mean, as far as the Avalanche, look, the Avalanche, this is not their first rodeo, and this is their hump that they're trying to get over, which is not winning the first round, or not winning the second round, actually, not getting to the Western Conference Finals or anything like that. I think they've been eliminated like the second round. They haven't really made it this far. And I've been predicting like the Avs to win the Cup like the last 2 seasons as well. It could have been them instead of the Lightning in this position with back-to-back Stanley Cups. Really could have. They've had the pieces all this time, and now maybe this is like the actual year where they're going for it, and they're really like, you know what, we're not playing this time. We're absolutely not playing. We're gonna just storm through the West and be as comfortable for whatever team we face in the East. I mean, the only thing that that could even throw Colorado off the rails would be, I mean, maybe like an inspired Oilers team that comes out of that Battle of Alberta, or even the Flames themselves coming out of the Battle of Alberta. Just that hardened, like that probably will go to 7 games or something like that. And we're about to see what happens tonight. And or just having them face off against, say, look, you go on to the Western Conference Finals facing off against an inspired Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl and that crew, because my assessment of the Oilers, especially in that Game 7 against LA, Connor McDavid had that look in his eyes. I think he's the best player in the NHL, and he's been that best player. He's proven it in the regular season, but he needs to show it off in the postseason. And now there was like this look in his eyes, like he's the captain of that team, but he had that determination in his eyes. I compared it to, on my own podcast, Sports Goose, got that plug in there right there. I compared it to LeBron James against the Boston Celtics in Game 6 back in 2012.
45, 15, and 5.
Yeah, when the Heat were down 3-2 in the series, and he had that look, that stare, just like, and I was like, oh my God, McDavid has that same stare right now, and I'm like, oh, that's gonna be scary. Whoever faces the Oilers right now, that's also very scary. But I don't think the Avs are going to come out of the West like comfortably, because it's such a juggernaut. But like I said, we've seen this before, and they can be thrown off. It just, one thing goes wrong, maybe. I'm not sure. Their goaltender doesn't play up to snuff. Who knows? But they're as good as anybody, and they're definitely handling it better than the Panthers are at the top in the East. But the East is better. I'm going to outright say it. The East is just better. Every team is just better. You look at the Final Four in the East right now. I mean, any one of them can come out, and you could be like, and you wouldn't really be scorned for it. Oh, I picked the Lightning to come out of the East. Okay. I picked the Rangers to come out of the East. All right, fine. The Hurricanes. Okay. And now, or the Cats. Anybody from the outside looking in, we're like, oh yeah, the East looks fantastic. Any one of those teams can win the cup. As far as the West, I mean, it's Edmonton and Calgary. Both of those teams need to prove themselves, and they've kind of both been on that kind of like teeter-tottering, like, okay, is this the year for these guys? Are they actually going to do something? And the Avs are the same way. And I think the Blues are just, I guess they have that championship window that they're still in, and they're just kind of rekindling the fire and see if they can go for another surprise run. So that's my assessment as to the teams that are left right now, as far as the West is concerned.
Mm-hmm. And it's going to be nobody said this was going to be easy for the Panthers. We even preached that when they were down 2-1 against Washington. They had a meeting after Game 3. I don't think there's a meeting this early in the playoffs, at least in this series for the Panthers. I don't think they're in that mode at this moment in time for the Cats. But you talked about the fire in their eyes, and I'm just let's relate that to the Panthers. When you were talking about McDavid, let's talk about that with the Panthers. There are times where I've seen Jonathan Huberdeau kind of with that fire in his eye too.
Huberdeau has that fire. He's got that look. Game 3 in Washington, he was mad. Like, of course, he took that penalty towards the end of that game, and he was kind of like, I shouldn't have taken that. But Huberdeau, this season especially, really isn't taking no guff from nobody. Mm-hmm. That's something. And even Barkov himself, but Barkov is more of a gentle giant in that sense. I can't imagine him having the LeBron stare. But if he ever does, then just look out, because he's about to go Super Saiyan, supersonic on people, and just get out of his way. And if we do see that Barkov, maybe we will see that sometime. If it happens anywhere, it might happen in this series, where he might have to take over a game, which I don't think we've really seen from Barkov. We've seen it in the regular season at times, but to do that in the postseason would really cement something. I mean, just another legend in Panthers history. There isn't much. There aren't many legends. We celebrated Bill Lindsay's birthday yesterday, and we're still celebrating that Game 5 goal against Boston 26 years later. And well, these guys this is it. They have their shot. And look, even back in, well, you were talking about comparing to teams, like that 96 team, very different makeup of a team, but also a bunch of guys that were unproven, and maybe a few guys that were picked up, like Brian Screwman had cups in their past and stuff, but most of those guys were brand new and all that stuff, had to prove themselves and how to outwork teams. And facing off against the Flyers, who in the second round, who were, beating Boston, sure, but the Panthers were never expected to beat them. And then the Penguins, especially that 96 Penguins teams who probably should have won the cup that season, or would have taken the Avs or the Red Wings, whoever came out of the West, to 7 games probably. To do that, I mean, there's some inspiration there in the past, and in this team, it's just as big of a mountain, I think, with the Lightning, back-to-back champs trying to make a dynasty. So that's yeah.
When even though I was 3 years old when the '96 season happened, I could only imagine when that Pittsburgh Penguins team got eliminated in 7 games versus the Florida Panthers. That was a home game for Pittsburgh, correct? If I
They were the number 1 team in the East. They had an absolutely legendary a team and season. Ron Francis, Mario Lemieux, Jaromir Jagr. I mean, they had a big 3. They had a big 3.
Yeah,
and they lost.
And we talk about the scoring with the Florida Panthers in their regular season. That's compared a lot to that Pittsburgh Penguins team from 1996, and I can only imagine the disappointment that they were feeling then. We're hoping that we're not dealing with any disappointment here on our side with where the Florida Panthers are at, and it just comes down to a few things, and we're actually going to discuss that on the other side of the break. We're going to talk about more about what they said in the press conference. We're also going to have talk about some disciplinary action for a Florida Panthers player heading into Game 2. But first, we're going to tell you all about BetOnline. And our partners at BetOnline continue to be the number 1 source for all your sports betting needs and info. Find all the latest odds, news, and sports development, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball scores, fights, and even next season's NFL futures. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs to esports and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Third and final segment here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast on this Thursday, May 19th edition of the show. I'm Armando Velez. I got Francisco Oporta of Litterbox Cats and Florida Panthers historian. So I think about a few things when it comes to I watched a little bit of the condensed game again this morning, and I looked a little bit about, even before the Florida Panthers were committing some of their penalties. I saw a little bit of active sticks for the Panthers, and of course that's not for lack of effort for the Panthers of committing their penalty. When it comes to committing their penalties, just everything. I think I counted like 5 times that the Florida Panthers in their press conference talked about the sticks. Yeah. When it comes to the tripping penalties that Mackenzie Weegar took early, the holding, and even if the Tampa Bay Lightning force a high stick onto them, the Florida Panthers still have their sticks right there for them to draw, for the Tampa Bay Lightning to draw a penalty. It's like Andrew Burnett talked about them putting themselves in a good position so that they can help draw themselves a penalty. It's not necessarily flopping for the official, but of course you got to try to sell a call here and there for the Panthers. And of course, I'm not going to blame John Cooper on the other side when it comes to putting yourself in a good position for the opposition to have their sticks in the wrong places. So that was another word that was used very often in the press conference about the sticks. So just when it comes to that, I'm sure we're going to have a better positioning of sticks when it comes to Game 2.
Yeah, it's and look, the Panthers kind of playing their heels a lot of the time in that third period, which they will once more clean up. I think it's and they obviously know what the problem is, which is good, and they'll address it. And they actually talked about it. So once more, I think the discipline will be a lot better. As far as embellishment, I mean, remember last series we got an embellishment call that was just like, really, on Lomberg, I think, yeah, and
Toronto.
Oh yes, and so it was just like
Game 1.
Yeah, I'm like, what's going on? So I think the I don't want the team to kind of be selling, but they do have to. They need to toe that line. All right, they need to get a little bit of little Chris Paul in themselves. Just a little bit, a tiny bit. Not like the Suns who themselves got eliminated. Number one team in the NBA got eliminated in the second round. We don't want that same thing to happen in the NHL now, because the Cats are number one. But um, I I really just I think that it's not really something that the team should be actively concerned about with regards to, but once more when they're moving their feet and they're speeding past guys and they're forcing Tampa Bay to make some lunges, get some sticks in the wrong area, and boom, oh, a slashing call, boom, oh, a hooking penalty, and it'll go from there. It'll go from there. Now, sure, we can try and get penalties. We got 3 last game. But once more, they're over on the power play. So sure, what happens once you get the call? That's the big issue. And just I mean, even if they get, let's say, the same amount next game, 3 power plays, they got to capitalize on at least one of them, because they get on one of them, and if it's at the right moment in the game, let's say third period, game's tied 2-2 or something like that, and it's 3-2 with 5 minutes left in the game, and then boom, Bob shuts the door, and hey, we're headed to Tampa 1-1. So that's always the thing. It's just executing on the power plays, because it doesn't matter regards with like the refs and the calls. Look, I think the refs were at least more fair in this first game than the ones that we got in the Capital series, but that's my own opinion. However, the discipline will be a lot better. I think they'll be aware of what they're doing. It's just a matter of if they are getting better at that, hopefully they don't get goaded into penalties out of anger or retribution against Tampa, because that's always the other danger, which happened with the Capitals and also happened last year between them and the Lightning.
Mm-hmm. And that's a good segue. That's a good segue to talk about lack of composure that we talked about in that I talked about in yesterday's episode, talking about Ben Sherratt, even though that became a 4-on-4 for the Panthers and Lightning. The NHL Department of Player Safety did issue a $5,000 fine for Ben Sherratt, and honestly, considering everything, that is the best case scenario for the Panthers and Ben Sherratt.
Yeah, let's set up a GoFundMe. I'll pay it. All the fans will contribute, and we'll get that out of the way.
Yeah. So the broadcast described it more as a head bump instead of a butt, because I tried looking up Darnell Nurse's headbutt again, and it was nowhere near. But of course,
yeah, not as serious.
Not as serious. But at the time, my adrenaline was still going after the game with the loss, recording like 30, 45 minutes after, and just being like so annoyed with that. It's like, what happened. It's just anticipated, just like kind of like fearing the worst from the Department of Player Safety, because you never know what they're going to rule. You never know if they're going to say whether, like TJ Oshie on that hit against Sam Bennett in round 1. So they go that direction. And it's like, you never know where they're going to go with Sherratt there. But this is the best case scenario with the $5,000 fine.
Yeah, no, I know I'm reading the comments there, but no, we'll all contribute to the $5,000. Don't worry, heck, the ticket prices will help with that. But yeah, no, it's the best case scenario. We're not down one less defenseman. That's good, and yeah, I mean, just something ticky tacky. And we'll forget about it. Sure, it's not going to be anything that memorable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are just the little itty bitty things about being out of position and just like taking a penalty that you're not supposed to. I mean, once again, it became a no harm, no foul situation for it being a 4-on-4. And like we talked about earlier, you limit those 14 power play shots to even a quarter, you give yourself a better chance to win. And and Jacob described this best on yesterday's episode. When you're down a man as well, you're not getting ice time for the people who aren't on your PK and power play units. Neither they're not getting into the groove of the game. They're not getting the offensive
That's a good point.
generated. That and it kind of throws the Panthers out of their rhythm as well. That they have to kind
They're
of
playing on their heels the entire time.
exactly and thinking, oh, we've had 6 penalties call on us. Let me not. They it could creep into their minds saying, let me not do the wrong thing instead of trying to just do the right thing, if that statement makes any sense. So that's what I think of it as.
I think the I guess the positive about this is Bob has still remained really good. So
Yes,
that's the other thing. We always have to remember that he's helped, because I mean these games could have been a lot worse
absolutely.
without Bob playing the way he's been, playing the way that, hey, this looks like a guy who's won business trophies before. Hey, all right, this is a $10 million man now. Here we go, $10 million a year. Here we go, and I think that's always a positive, uh, and everybody's noticed it for sure. He played toe to toe with Vasilevsky, and uh, the Panthers once more, they can feel a little bit comfortable with making some mistakes because Bob has been there to completely negate a lot of that. Now, of course, you can't, like, this far in, can't completely depend on you. They need to figure out the other stuff, but work out a better discipline. Okay, you'll be less time on special teams as far as the penalty kill. Once, and like you said, like Jacob said, get into the groove of the thing, get the offense going, get that high octane speed going, and everything like that. Crisp passes here and there, and execute. And I think there's a little bit of tentativeness when they're, especially when they're on the power play, where they might maybe an extra pass too much, or just not getting the best, or the right opportune thing. I think it's just a matter of just let it fly. Let's see what happens.
Mhm.
But
No
Bob
doubt.
has been
And
fantastic.
yeah, we're talking more about players that are not named Sergei Bobrovsky that
Mhm.
haven't had a good playoff series, like Mackenzie Weegar, of course, taking those 2 penalties, and of course,
I'm trying not to throw him under the bus, but man, when I saw that first penalty, I'm like, come on, man, come
yeah,
on. Didn't you read the tweets?
yeah, it's
All
best
of
if he
Panthers
doesn't.
Twitter is not happy right now.
Yeah, no doubt. And I'm sure Mackenzie Weegar and Andrew Burnett are definitely talk about after the game about how he needs to be better as well. And I'm hoping for a better game two out of Mackenzie Weegar. And hey, Andrew Burnett did the team a favor by mixing in those lines so that he complements his game definitely with someone like Gus Forsling, and you have
Yeah.
those bigger bodies of Aaron Ekblad and Ben Sherratt together, whose pace are very similar versus a Uyghur and a Forsling, with where Forsling's more of a play driver as well
Mhm.
for the Cats. So Francisco, I want to thank you once again for joining me on this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. It's a must win tomorrow, and we're hoping that by the time a few weeks comes around that we have you on again doing podcasts related to more wins. But for everybody to find your work online, let them know where they can find you.
Okay, so you can look for my Panthers history stuff. I'm at FLA Cats History on Twitter. I also am FLA Panthers History on Instagram, and I started up a TikTok, and I got to figure that thing out as well. And of course, you want to hear my stupidness with my friends, and one of them happens to be a Lightning fan, so we're going at it. You can check out our own podcast at sports_goofs on Twitter, or you can look for it on podcast apps, whichever one you want to choose, because we're on everything. And yeah, and of course, Litterbox Cats. We have previews and recaps of the games as well, and you can check out Todd, who does a great job for us there.
No doubt. Follow everything that Francisco and Todd do over there. They do a great job. It's literally every single game, pre, post, open forums, you name it, over there at Litterbox Cat. So Thank you once again, Francisco, and hope to have you back on soon.
All right.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Fantasy Hockey and the Crosscheck NHL show with Andrew Berkshire and Mary Clark will be covering all the postseason activities around the National Hockey League. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And for your second listen of the day, make sure you listen to today's episode of Locked On NHL. From first round matchups to each Stanley Cup kiss, Locked On NHL covers the playoffs like no other. Hear the latest news and opinions from local experts every day, Monday through Friday. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. So I'm Armando Velez with Francisco Oporta. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day.